right, let's talk about the elections and what to expect aside from what we have in that report perspective on conduct. I have two gentlemen, constitutional lawyers. Jide Ologun is with me in the studio, and Onyekpere joins us virtually. Gentlemen, thank you very much for giving us your time on the news. I'll start with you in the studio, Jide. From all we've seen with preparations, how confident are you that tomorrow's exercise will be as hitch-free as promised?
On the scale of being hitch-free, if you consider the fact that the law enforcement agents are ready, and of course the curfew that has been introduced, the restriction during the day also, we expect that it should go well, because we are all expected to be subject to the rule of law. But having said that, there may be some party faithfuls who may want to exceed the limit of the rule of law, and our electoral laws have provisions for dealing with such characters. And that leads us to the next question: have we implemented these provisions of our laws? And I believe the answer is no. And that is an opportunity for some to disrupt the processes. But I hope that since it's a Lagos State affair and not throughout the Federation. I mean,
there's a lot of confident display that tomorrow is all ready and people should come out. I want to talk to you about voter apathy and this restriction of movement when it comes to elections, but that will be if we have time. Let me go to Eze and ask, few hours and then we'll be at the ballot. How have you assessed the level of preparedness on the one hand, and then let's talk about this skepticism that none of what we have had from the police and other agencies is anything it's anything new. The concern is that vote buyers and vendors of violence will still be on the prowl. Are you certain that tomorrow will be satisfactory in terms of safety, freedom of voting who you want to, and less of vote buying? The question is for you, actually.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. And let me start by saying that it is not what the electoral umpire says. It's not about what the police and the law enforcement agencies say. It's not about what the different stakeholders say, because this is not the first time we're having elections in Nigeria, in Lagos. But it is about what we can make of what they will likely do tomorrow. And if previous experience is anything to go by, there are doubts that those stakeholders are going to keep to their words. So for me, it is about the citizens simply looking out to be sure that the rules and regulations and the laws have been abided with by the authorities, and probably documenting enough in the event it may need to go into a litigation about evidence that may be presented to the courts, so that the courts can use it to determine actually who won the elections. In terms of vote buying, nothing has been done in Nigeria to stop it. So I expect that tomorrow votes will still be bought. But it's about what evidence are we going to present to make sure that it influences the decision of the tribunals or the courts after the elections in the event that they are challenged. So I have no doubt in my mind that people will still try to do vote buying, but it's about whether the laws of the land will be enforced against vote buying.
Do you expect any sort of enforcement? I mean, there is the skepticism that people would even come out. Voter apathy I was mentioning earlier. Do you think that people have the confidence, considering also that most of these parties are going to the election fractured? The APC is, some people say, almost we're not supposed to be calling names now, but some of these parties are going into the election not as a whole.
Absolutely. And when you talk about electoral apathy, I think that has come to stay in Nigeria for now, because many are disgruntled about some of the outcomes of previous elections in the country. And from those we have related with, some have told us that they won't have any business than to just stay in their homes and let the election that has been conducted, in quotes, then they wait for the announcements, because on the scale of perception, some are of the view that even what will be shown to the public in the glare of the sunshine may be just an action to portray the fact that there was an election. And this mistrust is a very solid concern in the country. And I totally agree with my learned colleague on this issue of vote buying. In fact, if you understand the electoral landscape in Nigeria, the vote buying that you see on elections day are just minor ones. The real ones would have gone underground, you know, going to talk to electorates. And it's quite unfortunate that some of the electorates who should focus more on sustainable development are also greedy to say, now, this is an opportunity for me to have a bite of the national or state cake. So let me have all I can have now, and you can have your 4 years in office. So these are issues. We have not come to the point of being able to satisfy the mandate of the global standard of elections, being free, fair, and credible. But that is the stage we have
is there a
right
possibility
now.
we'll have that in our lifetime?
Hopefully,
let's keep hope
it's all
alive.
a function of leadership.
Yeah.
If leadership desires that, why not?
So talking about leadership, Eze, I want to ask you about this local government autonomy. We're having elections now. Exactly a year ago today, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of, financial allocations going directly to this local government. But what we have today is that about 4.5 trillion naira has been routed through the governors as against the Supreme Court ruling. What's your thinking as to how that might impact, participation, conduct of local government development at that level, and if that is going to continue, or we'll see a change perhaps in the coming year that monies, now that we have local government chairman, the monies will be directly sent to them after the elections?
If you recall very well, there wasn't any declared disputes between the federal government and the states before the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation proceeded surprisingly to the Supreme Court and had this judgment. It was like a thunderbolt out of the blues. And many Nigerians were happy that, at least for once, let's have democratic consolidation at the local government level. Let's have resources and funds not put in the hands of state governments, put in the hands of people at the grassroots level who the locals can easily relate to and hold accountable, because it will be very difficult for some people in the locality to begin to hold the governor accountable, but they could think about their councillors and the local government chairman who lives amongst them that they can talk to and say what has happened to their money. We celebrated it, but surprisingly, the same government that got that Supreme Court judgment developed cold feet, because the president was thinking of governors to bring into the fold of his party for 2027. And maybe it's likely, from my perception, that the governors more have said, you don't take away the meal and the food that was left for us to manage anyhow we like, and then you still want us to line up before you. So nobody has even gone back to the Supreme Court to cite anybody for contempt. Nobody, whether it's Accountant General or the the Attorney General, is talking about implementing this. So I'm not surprised, and that's why I'm thinking tomorrow may follow the tradition of previous local government elections, because the president is interested in wooing the governors, and maybe the governors are giving conditions, and part of the conditions is that they have to control local government funds. And you cannot control local government funds if you don't control those who are quote and unquote elected or selected as local government chairmen and councillors. So that's why I'm feeling that that judgment may have a very big weight on tomorrow's election, not just in Lagos alone, and in future local government elections, because the governors still want to be in control. They are the persons who appointed the members of LASIEC, and they report to them, and there is nothing.
So, Eze, you're talking about the politics of it.
Even the...
You're talking about the politics, sorry to interject, but you're talking about the politics of it, that the politics would not allow implementation, but that would be a direct flouting of a Supreme Court ruling, the highest court in the land. Let me come to Mr. Ologun in the studio and ask about that. Will we ever see a scenario where the Supreme Court ruling will come to pass? Because after one government, another will come, and there will be politics to be played at the detriment of the people. And who would be, something that Eze said, I'd like your thoughts on, who would be able to go to the Supreme Court to cite any of the governors for content? Would it be the governors that are being cited, or it will be the federal government in this instance, because they are the ones that are supposed to release those monies to the local government?
It is quite ridiculous, and let me say the judiciary must rise up to this embarrassing situation, because the Supreme Court remains the highest court in the land since 1963. And what we have observed is that somewhere along the line, perhaps for political reasons, a 3-month moratorium was given to the governors in respect of that decision of Supreme Court, which was to start in August last year. And after that, there was an announcement that the local government authorities should come and open a special account with CBN. And you know, one of the conditions for opening that account is that the local government authorities should present about 2 years audited account. So there were different hindrances thrown up to challenge the decision of the Supreme Court being implemented. And I think that is contrary to the rule of law. What the rule of law says is that every individual, every institution, all the MDAs within the system are subject to the prevalence of the law. But when we have situations where the decision of the Supreme Court can be, you know, thrown aside in court by some stakeholders, it's quite embarrassing. Yeah,
the second part of the question, I'm curious as to your thinking. Who is the onus on to go to the Supreme Court to cite maybe the governors for contempt, or is it the federal government now?
The Attorney General went to court by virtue of Section 232 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, and he got this decision. So if he is not satisfied by the fact that it has not been implemented in 1 year, today is actually the anniversary, then he should go back to the Supreme Court for intervention. But it appears they are just pushing it, that the Secretary to the federal government is the one presiding. No, you know, these are issues. It's embarrassing.
So many issues.
It's a systemic gap.
In 30 seconds, if you can, Eze, just your concluding thoughts on the subject, because I know I interrupted you there. Can you hear me? Mr. Onyekpere, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I just said in 30 seconds, because we're out of time for this conversation, what would be your submission on who could cite the governors for violation of the Supreme Court ruling, or the federal government in this instance?
Well, both the federal government, the Honorable Attorney General, and the governors are guilty of violating the Supreme Court ruling, particularly the Honorable Attorney General, who initiated the case and got the judgment. So, unfortunately, when both the person who started the suit and those who are bound by the decision of the court are guilty of violating the court's decision, it becomes like a neutral third party, maybe NGOs, that could go to court and ask the Supreme Court to make sure that their decision is obeyed. But if you are waiting for either the Attorney General or the governors, I don't think that decision will ever be obeyed. Everything is politics, and that's it.
Let's look forward to a successful exercise tomorrow. Mr. Ologun, thank you very much for being here. Mr. Onyekpere, always a pleasure to have you as well.